Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Let Bree Tell It. Sitting here with Lisa. This time we got good lighting, and you can see her. We're going to talk about her background, and we're just going to jump right into that. Okay. Lisa, we're going to talk about where you're from, where you grew up, what was it like growing up for you, when did you start? We'll go.
Yeah,
We'll go.
All right. We'll start with some of these other questions there. Hey, my name is Lisa Bennett. I'm 58 years old. I was born in 1961 in southeast Alabama on Fort Rucker, which was not as noisy as my neighbor's fireworks right now. So this is like using up last night's fireworks that they didn't get to. Anyway, I was born in the old Army hospital there on Fort Rucker, and let's see, what do we want to talk about? Oh, we were talking
about segregation.
Yeah, we were talking. Yeah, so we started this interview once, and we had a little technical difficulty. So I have to make sure that I remember what we've talked about and what we haven't talked about. So, Bree had asked me about how segregated my life was growing up, and the answer is not as much as you might think in southeast Alabama in the early to late 60s. We lived in Daleville, which is the town next to Fort Rucker, one of the smaller towns next to Fort Rucker, until 1974. So at that point, my family moved back to South Carolina, which is where my parents were from, upstate South Carolina, which also figures into like the differences in different places in my life. But going back to Daleville, when I was very young, I did not know a segregated society because of the Army post. So the Army was very strict about schools being well integrated, properly integrated, and they just didn't put up with any segregation nonsense in any of the public spaces near the Army post. So, so the town was integrated, people worked together, and I was saying earlier to Bree that one place where this was not true. Well, I never knew a segregated school. We had integrated schools the whole time I was in school. There was a lot of other weird stuff we could talk about, but as far as integration, I never had to go through like seeing that stuff happening in my town. We saw it on the news, and I knew about my family in South Carolina going through some issues with integration and busing and race riots and all kinds of crazy stuff. But where I lived, we didn't have that stuff going on. So I felt pretty sheltered, I guess, as a child from that.
Which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, I mean, but I'm not saying that, black folks had equal opportunity or any of that stuff. I'm just saying we were out there together. And when I was very young, like about 7, was the first time I ever saw a sign that said, it was either whites only, or maybe it was a drinking fountain sign or something that said like white and colored. I can't remember exactly what the sign was, but I just remember it had some sort of differentiation, a racial differentiation between this is not for everybody. And I asked my mom about it. I remember it was an old building that either wasn't being used or that side of the building wasn't being used, that door was not being used anymore. Something like that. That door, the sign was some old leftover from before. And so I asked my mom about it, and she explained to me how things used to be, that's just the way it was when she was growing up, that things were like that. They went to the movies, and black folks sat in the balcony. She lived in a town that had a movie theater. I grew up in a smaller town than that, but when she grew up, they went to the movies, and the white kids were downstairs, like in the Saturday afternoon movies. The white kids would be downstairs, and the black kids would be up in the balcony, and that was just the way it was when she was growing up. But I never experienced that. So I always laugh and say that our town had 1 traffic light and 2 Asian grocery stores. Because I grew up during Vietnam, we had a lot of young Asian women in our town who had married GIs who had gone to Vietnam. So there was a younger Vietnamese women And then there were older Japanese women who had married GIs who were there in Japan during the occupation. And we still have army bases in Japan. So people still bring home Japanese wives, but in a completely, different context now.
They got them coming in the mail now, them sex dolls.
No, let's not. Well, we're not going to go there. But anyway, they had, we went to a small, or medium-sized Southern Baptist church in this town in Daleville, Daleville Baptist Church. And they had, we had a Japanese ladies Sunday school class in our church because we had enough Japanese women at the time to make their own class. They got their materials from the Foreign Mission Board, the Southern Baptist Foreign Mission Board. So they got the materials that would be sent to Japan to the missionaries there. They used them in their Sunday school class. So they had their Japanese Bibles and they had their Japanese Sunday school books. So I was fascinated by that as a child.
Right.
So I grew up around people who didn't look like me, and people going to church who didn't look like me. Not many, but some. So it was more than most people in the South probably had in their churches.
Okay. So have you ever dated outside of your race?
I have. Let's see. I was married when I got married when I was 20. Okay. So, I had dated in high school and, my first year in college, and then I got married and took some time off. So I married a white guy who actually looked like we could be related. We weren't.
Thank God.
Please understand, this was South Carolina, but we were not related. But after he and I split up, it was 8 years later, I dated several people that year, just within that year, who were not so much like me. So I dated a Jewish guy, I dated an African American guy, and then I moved to Japan and dated a Japanese guy. So within that year, I sort of spanned the, many cultures.
Try everything once, that's what I say. That's the only way you know if you like it or not, right?
Yeah, well, and then we start to think about, that starts to sound like all white people, all black people, and all Jewish people, and all Japanese people are the same, which of course they're not. But I know what you mean. It's like, yeah. That was just a year where I had a lot of opportunities to date people out who were not just stereotypically white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. I'll say it that way. So in that case, I also dated a couple of Catholic guys. So they're not white, but not the religion I grew up with. So it's a different, those are also interesting differences.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So with you growing up around Vietnam, you would consider that aberration, right?
I'm sorry, consider it
aberration. Consider it something that's not normal.
An aberration. Oh, aberration.
Okay, I said it wrong.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
Right. As what's going on today, right?
It's not yet. It's pretty different, I would say, the way that I see it. No, like today is an aberration.
Yes.
And when I grew up in the 60s. Right. Also, of course, the civil rights work. Civil rights. Right. Civil rights movement was going on when I was a child. And it started much earlier, but moved on through the 60s, and of course, it's still going on today. Just has different guises, right, as we go through the years, and it gets more or less media play. But yeah, when I was growing up, there was Vietnam, which was disproportionately hard on black folks and other people of color, but specifically young black men got sent to Vietnam way more than young white women. Young white men did. Women weren't even going to combat back then, so that wasn't an issue. But that was a different time. It was an unusual time to grow up there. And then now is just 2020 has been an interesting year. But there's been a lot of stuff in the meantime too. There's been a lot of unusual times in the meantime. Just not all at the same time. Like 2020 is like pandemic and civil rights movement and Civil War and the Saharan dust storm recently, people were saying, and the Dust Bowl, and like seeing what it would be like to be in all those historical times, but not all of it.
It's the same, but it's different.
Yeah, it is the same.
So to a certain extent, would you agree with me when I say history is repeating itself?
Well, repeating, it's more like a spiral, I think.
Okay.
So I don't really see it as necessarily that it's a circle that just keeps going around and around exactly the same. But it's more like it goes around, but it changes a little, and I think it goes forward a little bit each time. So I don't think it ever goes back quite to the beginning point.
Would you still consider it insanity?
What's going on right
now? The
The
definition of insanity, doing the same thing,
but
expecting a different outcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is
like what's happening.
Right.
Let me ask it like this.
Yeah, like let's just be a little more clear.
Right. Let me ask it a little different. Okay, so you was alive when Martin Luther King died, which is a civil movement.
Oh yeah, during the civil rights.
Right now, it's a civil movement. So what would you say is the difference between back then versus today? And one more, including this, because we are talking about Dr. King, he had a dream.
Right.
Do you feel like his dream came true? Because I don't.
No, not yet.
Okay. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Yeah. So, going back to earlier part of the civil rights movement, or what the time that we call the civil rights movement, so the 60s. Things were different in that a lot of things that are legal now had not been specifically made legal. Well, let's say when I was born, the Voting Rights Act had not been signed yet, had not come into being. So that was 1964. So from a female standpoint, until the Voting Rights Act was signed, African American women really didn't have the right to vote. Even though women had been given the right in 1920, women, meaning white women, were given the right to vote in 1920. African American women were legally, technically given the right to vote then, but there was a lot of Jim Crow era stuff that was going on, not just in the South, but all over the country, but more concentrated in the South and more by law in the South. That there were poll taxes and there were tests that people had to take to be able to be eligible to vote, and those were reading comprehension tests or tests about current events and things like that. And white folks would be given those tests just with a wink. If they didn't pass them, they still just shoo on in to vote. Right. And if black folks didn't pass them, then they got turned away from the polls. So all that was supposed to become illegal. Like really, the feds were going to crack down on it in 1964 with the Voting Rights Act. And we know black folks are still being disenfranchised. There's still all kinds of stuff that's going on. There's still a lot of gerrymandering by racial lines, along racial lines, to limit African American votes to certain districts and not allow, just dilute the African American vote, and the vote of poor people as well. But specifically, as far as race goes, a lot of the gerrymandering has been done specifically to cut down on, basically to disenfranchise black voters. So, I don't know where we went with, how far off topic we got on that.
Right. So, comparing back then to now.
Oh, yeah, right. So we were talking about that. So I think the big difference is that they've drastically changed as far as people being able to get jobs. I mean, it's not anything like equal yet, but you do see African American chief executives of small corporations, not large ones, but smaller corporations. I'm not sure what the YMCA USA was like back then because I wasn't involved, but that's where I teach. And I know that I teach at East Lake Y. I teach yoga at the East Lake Y. And most of our management and most of our support staff there are African American, which reflects the community.
Okay.
I know that, we see certainly a lot more African American actors, not necessarily in the starring roles all the time, but we do see more African American actors, other people of color in, acting in films. But yeah, sorry.
Oh, okay.
One of our nice pollinators, Bumblebee, who won't actually sting you, but they're kind of scary.
Right.
So things have changed, but not enough.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. My point of view of it is that now versus back then and now, more, I'm pretty sure it would have been a big percentage difference of white people actually wanting to change too.
Oh, right.
Right.
For sure.
Exactly. Like now there's white people supporting this. It's a whole bunch of interracial couples out there, which I'm not going to say that it wasn't interracial back then, but back then it was forced interracial. Now it's consensual.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're going to talk about forced, I think we're going back like 100 years before the civil rights movement. So like 1860s, there was definitely a lot of force.
But it was still like looked down upon, I would say.
But as far as like being looked down upon, certainly. And I'm trying to remember, when was the Supreme Court decision about the couple whose last name was Loving? I can't remember their...
Oh my gosh, I've seen that, and they went to court. I can't remember. That movie was beautiful. He was not having that. He said, "Look, baby, we ain't going then." That man supported his black woman.
Yeah,
I respect that.
Right.
Like to even to move, to have to change your whole life because of the person you love. That's a beautiful story.
Right, but I was trying to remember what year the Supreme Court.
Okay, y'all, apologize. We have a little bit of technical difficulties. It's my first time trying to do this, so we have to change locations. So hopefully this one we won't have to deal with the heat problem. So with that being said, I'm going to jump right back into the interview. So with everything that we've already talked about, it's very clear that you are not really racist yourself. As I let you all know, Lisa is an activist, pro-black. So with that being said, what about your family? Do you have kids?
I don't have kids. We have dogs and cats. Those are our children, our fur kids, but we don't have any. I chose not to. I chose to remain child-free. So we don't have kids. I have, nieces and nephews, and but yeah, no kids.
Okay, so do your husband support the pro-black thing?
Oh, absolutely. And I should back up and say that when you said that, I'm not racist, well, I mean, I don't want to be racist. I'm doing my very best not to be racist, but I've been doing a lot of reading lately, and I've thought of myself pretty much my whole life. I thought that I wasn't racist, but doing more soul searching and thinking and reading, I realized that, well, there's the Avenue Q song, right? Everyone's a little bit racist. And I think that, being immersed in white culture, being raised in white culture, just because that's what our dominant culture is here. As a white person in the white culture, we don't think of ourselves as having race. We think of ourselves, most of us just don't think about race that much. Race is something that other people have to deal with. And so I realize now that, starting to see myself as a white person in the dominant culture, I realize that I have had racist thoughts and beliefs because they were instilled in me through the culture.
Your integrity.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just like it's part of it's integral. Yeah, it's integral to your daily life. It's just that that white tends to be the default. And so when we talk about people, we'll either just say I was talking to a man today, or I was talking to a black man today, or, you know, if we're trying to be thoughtful, we might say African American, or, you know, a person of color, or something like that. But you see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like white is the default. And that shouldn't be true.
Right.
But it is true in our society that white people have had power the whole time that this society has been in existence.
Exactly.
And coming from England, before, white people were in power there, white people were in power basically all across Europe, and white people have been in power in places where they have colonized all around the globe. So as I was talking earlier about growing up Southern Baptist, you know, we were sending missionaries, white Southern Baptist missionaries, to places all over the world and trying to convince those people that what they believed was wrong and what we, the white saviors, believed was right, and that Jesus was white and looked like us. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that you grow up with that you don't realize is instilled into you until you really start to think about it. And so, yeah, I don't want to just not be racist. I want to be anti-racist and activist, and I'm working in that direction. But I keep coming up against thoughts and feelings and attitudes that I didn't realize, like I never even thought that they were racist, because they were just like typical.
Like entitlement.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Right. And so, if you'd asked me, you know, if I was racist, I would have said, well, of course I'm not racist. But still, you know, there are these thoughts that pop up, and, you know, and I'll have to stop and say, okay, let me think about this. What perspective am I looking from? Is this real, or is this just what I was raised to believe? So I've been reading some books. So I'll just tell you this part real quick. I've been reading some books. Most recently, I read Debbie Irving's book, Waking Up White.
Right, which we talked about that.
Yeah, right. And she really, her experience was different from mine in that she was raised in a very well-to-do family in the Northeast, and I was raised in a working class family in the Southeast. But as far as just the way that she thought about culture, and that white people were the template, that was exactly the way I was raised. And I think that's the way that a lot of black folks are raised. It's like, I know people who, when they were children, they thought white people were better than they were because white people were in power. And it's just this kind of icky stew that we've all been stewed in. And it gets on all of us, whether we intended to or not. So I read that book, and then right now I'm listening. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. I do that while I'm doing other things. I listen, things like weeding the garden or cooking or something that doesn't require a lot of that kind of brain time. So right now I'm listening to the book White Fragility, and have you read that? Have you read either of these books? I'm sure you haven't read the other ones because we talked about it, but White Fragility's a huge bestseller right now. And it's aimed at white people, to get white people to understand racism, and like systemic racism, not just whether they're mean to black people or not, but how has our society disenfranchised black people from, not just from voting, but also from owning their own homes and getting things like the GI Bill and all this other stuff that I didn't realize. I didn't realize that was something that was denied to African American soldiers who came home from World War II. Like, they could get the GI Bill, but they could only go to like 1 or 2 colleges instead of any college. They could get so if there was space at the college, maybe they could go to college. They could get the GI Bill for reduced rates on mortgages in certain communities. But the federal government actually made it basically impossible for realtors to sell homes in white communities to African American families because they were afraid that it would cause the house value to go down if the neighborhood became integrated. And then the FHA might not be able to get their money back for that mortgage. So there was just a lot of stuff that I didn't realize.
I definitely did not know that either. That I just learned something.
Isn't that crazy?
Right.
It's
very crazy.
But this stuff was going on in the late 40s and early 50s and on into, I mean, I would say it's still going on now.
I feel like that too.
There's still redlining, it's just not as obvious. But, and that's what they called it, was redlining. But the fact that it was like part of the federal program to keep people from being integrated is crazy.
It's still like that nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of white men in power that will mess with a black woman in the sheets.
Oh, right.
But marry a white woman because when he goes out in power, he needs that white woman
Sure.
on his side.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of that.
Oh, honey, that's been going on. You were talking earlier about, like whether it was forced or accepted or whatever, but I was raised in South Carolina, and, after we moved from Alabama, we moved back to South Carolina where my family's from, and Strom Thurmond was the senator. And he was a senator until, gosh, he was almost 100.
Now, is that a black person?
No, he was white. But the point of the story is that he had 2 families.
Oh, wow.
And this came out later. He was not just a white man in power. He was like the uber segregationist.
Oh, Lord.
And in the 1940s, he's the one who formed the Dixiecrat Party, which is the party that left the Democrats, because the Democrats, now I'm just going to completely forget who was president. Truman signed he integrated the military, and he signed the Voting Rights Act in 64, so this was before that. So this was integration of the military in 1946, I believe, right after World War II. Truman signed this act to integrate the military, and the Southern Democrats lost their minds. They lost their minds, and they split off into a third party called the Dixiecrats. And Strom Thurmond ran for president on the Dixiecrat platform of white supremacy and segregation forever. But he had a black mistress and a whole black family on the side. And all this came out years later.
And that's still going on right now.
I'm sure it is.
And it's sad. It's sad.
So anyway, that's the point when somebody is so outspokenly racist and segregationist. It's kind of like when somebody's super homophobic.
Right. I was just
It's
about
like
to say that.
scratch a homophobe, find a closet case. You know,
Right.
like they're probably actually gay
Right.
and ashamed of it.
Because if you're a straight man and you're comfortable in your own skin,
You don't care.
my point is that. So if you're not messing with a black person and you're not scared of someone finding out, then why would you care? Why are you making such a big deal about something that's so small?
Right.
So that's crazy. Okay, gonna get into these interview questions.
Oh, you asked me about my husband. We didn't actually cover
Yes,
that.
let's touch on that.
Right, yeah, so actually David is probably way ahead of me on this whole, understanding things, understanding the way things are. He's a white man who has a, good corporate job. Interestingly, his field, he's an actuary, his field is not, it's probably white dominated, it's probably majority white. But there certainly are a lot of people of color. They tend to be Asian. There definitely are black actuaries. Don't get me wrong, but he works with a lot of people who don't look like him.
Okay.
A lot of women, a lot of people of color. But he knows, as a middle-aged white man, so I should say straight white man, cisgender, all that jazz. He knows that he's playing life on easy level, is what he calls it. So he said when he was in college, he went to a college where it was almost all white people, because it was in some tiny town in Missouri, and they just didn't have that many black folks there. But all of his friends were basically white dudes like him, and most of them were also straight, cisgender, etc., and had both their parents, because he was hanging around with a bunch of people who were like valedictorians of their high school, and so they were pretty privileged in that way. Maybe not super rich, but they all had very stable home lives and etc. Then they had a few friends who were either gay, or their family was a mess, or they had to work a job because they couldn't get the scholarship that they needed because their family was a mess, or they didn't have a second parent, or whatever. And he said that they realized back then, he and his friends realized that they just used the video game metaphor. They said, we're playing life on easy level, and all these other people are having to play life on much harder levels than we are.
Right.
So I don't know that they really thought about what exactly they could do about that, but they did realize they didn't take it for granted.
Right.
That they were
less fortunate.
Yeah, and they didn't take it for granted that they were more fortunate actually than the other people that they thought had to work, harder. They recognized that, and they tried not to take what they'd been given for granted.
Right.
So they still worked hard in school, and they did a lot of other things like that, So, but they knew that it was easier for them. So he knows, he's known his whole life, that his life is easier because he is a straight white man in America, who doesn't, who isn't like part of some small religious minority, or he's just not persecuted in any way.
He's free.
Yeah.
And I really think that's what it boils down to right now, is understanding the word free and actually being free.
Yes.
Black people are not free.
Agreed.
White people are free.
Mm-hmm.
So even though we don't
like
have,
men are free.
yes, because women are women regard. Now and why is that? When it comes to women, it doesn't have to have a race.
Well, right. I mean,
It does, but it doesn't.
yeah. Okay. So there definitely are racist feminists. There's a whole thing about that. But yeah, it's like okay. So I'm gonna use a word that normally I wouldn't use, because this is a quote from Yoko Ono.
Okay.
Back in the 60s. Do you know Yoko Ono?
I've heard of Yoko.
Yeah. So she married John Lennon from the Beatles.
Okay.
And she was actually I should say she's still living. She's in her 80s now. She's an awesome, interesting artist. She's Japanese, and she has done just a bunch of really wild art over the years. But she's always been an activist for the disenfranchised, and what she said is, "Woman is the nigger of the world." And like I said, but that was in the 60s that she said that. But basically what she was saying is that women all over the world are the downtrodden.
Right.
As a white woman, my life is super easy compared to a lot of people's lives. But I still have to be concerned about all sorts of stuff that a man never has to be concerned about. So,
Right.
So you had a question.
Yeah.
And I'm just
Actually,
gonna
I want to comment on that.
Right.
Because on my YouTube channel, my first video talks about how I was suicidal. And a man commented on there, and he said, "I don't understand, all capital letters, how a woman could ever be suicidal when she has it so easy."
Oh,
That is what I call a nigga, because he's ignorant.
that's an ignorant person.
Yes, ignorant as hell.
And that's actually what my dad used to say, is that my dad was he was not overtly racist, but he was like a white man from his time period. He was born in 1939. But he used to say that a nigger is an ignorant person, and they could be white or black. That would be the way he would use that word. He didn't use it, but if he did, that would be what he meant.
A lot of people would think that I shouldn't be sitting here comfortable with you using that word. But me, myself, I am not a nigga. So
No,
therefore,
absolutely
it doesn't
not.
offend me. That's what we go back to saying about if you're gay and it offended you. So if you are an ignorant person, then of course that's going to offend you. But it does not offend me.
Right, no.
But my final question before we get into this interview was, how does it feel living in between two black people?
Oh, yeah, so fine. I mean,
Right.
that's the way it was when we moved. No, actually, that's not true. When we moved in, there was a white family on that side, but whatever, you know.
Right, it doesn't bother you.
The neighborhood was what it's like now when we moved here. We didn't come here thinking, oh, this neighborhood's gentrifying. So it wasn't like that at all. We moved here because we needed a bigger house. I had a business that I was running from home, and I needed space for that. So we moved over here because this house seemed like it would fit that business, and I'm not doing that business anymore, so it doesn't matter. But now I have a home massage therapy business when it's safe to do that.
Yeah.
Which of course you can't do right now. But we moved out here. We moved from Southwest Atlanta, which was, if anything, more predominantly black than this neighborhood is. Our neighborhood here's maybe 60% black, 40% white. I don't know, something like that. It's definitely mixed. It's very mixed, and we have some. I mean, that doesn't count like a small number of Hispanics and a small number of Asian folks who live in the neighborhood as well. But yeah, I mean, we moved over here from Southwest Atlanta. Now, Southwest Atlanta, when I moved there, I mean, that was a bit of a surprise, kinda, because our street was very mixed, but only because some old folks still lived there who had never left, who didn't hit the white flight when
They left.
so they stayed, and so we had a lot of older white folks and younger black families on the street, but the neighborhood was very predominantly black. And when I went to the grocery store, a lot of times I would be the only white person in the grocery store.
Did you feel like you was unsafe?
No,
Okay.
no, I just noticed. It's like you notice, like, huh.
Right.
But that's the thing is, as a white person, I typically feel safe most places. Now, there definitely could be some times and places that I may not feel comfortable and safe, but that's the protection of my white skin, is that I have grown up in this society feeling, this is something that, I can't think of the name of the author right now, the woman who wrote White Fragility. She writes about this. She's another white woman, and she does what we used to call diversity training for a living. Now she's talking about what race relation training for businesses and things. But so she's done a lot of thinking about this, a lot of studying. But she said that she grew up in this society feeling like she belonged. And that's kind of the thing about being white in this society is we have all grown up with this sense of security that pretty much everywhere we go, we are welcome. Now, there certainly are places that maybe I just never have the opportunity to go or think to go to,
Right.
where I might feel like I was stepping into someone else's safe space, you know. But yeah, in the grocery store, I mean, I felt as safe as anybody else felt in that neighborhood at that time. So we had, like, you know how they named the Krogers in Atlanta?
No.
Oh, did you not know
No.
that? Have you not lived in Atlanta that long, or?
I lived on MLK, but it was only for maybe 2 months.
Oh, okay.
See, I'm the opposite. I grew up in Ackworth, Woodstock, Kennesaw area, which is where most rich white people live.
Oh, right. So you'd be like sometimes the only
Right.
black person in the grocery store.
It's mixture up there.
Uh-huh.
But see, the thing about me is that I'm your color,
Mhm.
almost. This is me with a tan, and
Uh-huh.
I haven't got a tan in years.
Right.
So, my name is Brianna Clark.
Oh, yeah. So you got.
I am shaped like a white person. So, and a lot of white people nowadays are getting their lips done.
Oh, yeah.
I've been asked if my lips are fake, so I feel like I'm one of the people that's kind of in the middle. I feel safe wherever I go. You know what I'm saying? I can blend in wherever I go. I can be ghetto. I can be, hey, okay, I'm going home. I'm at work for again. Let me quiet down, pipe it down. But and it's crazy because, it's just different than living in Atlanta. I lived in Atlanta, but I still was white girl or Ackworth. I was not just someone who blended in the hood.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Right. So.
Well, I mean, I was going to stand out no matter what, so there wasn't any blending in.
I feel like with me too, you know. So I'll be like, you know, if you want to call Ackworth, and I ain't gonna lie, cause Ackworth, it's blacks up there, but it's white. You know what I'm saying? Like when you come through my neighborhood, it's quiet. I blast my music wherever I go, so you know they know me. But other than that, it's quiet. So I didn't deal with that. But when I did. When we first moved here, we lived in Clayton County. So in 6th grade, my mom moved me up to Ackworth. I did not know it was that many white people in Georgia. Period. In Clayton County, you just didn't see them like that. So when I came up to Ackworth, it was like, okay, so what? I mean, like, why? You know what I'm saying? But looking at it then versus growing up in Clayton County versus Ackworth is a big difference. So I can understand why it's made then.
So did your mom take you there so that you could go to a better school?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually a problem child, but that's a whole nother interview.
Yeah. So that's the thing though, is that there's like this whole idea of, and it's not just an idea, I mean it's a fact that one of the reasons we were able to move here and didn't have to think about it twice was we didn't have kids to put in school.
That makes sense.
And the schools here in this neighborhood, especially when we moved here, which was 17 years ago, almost 18 now, the schools were not good. They just weren't.
I believe you.
Like actively bad and dangerous. And so I felt bad that my neighborhood schools were like that, but I didn't have to worry that my child
wasn't your issue.
Was gonna be disadvantaged by that because I didn't have kids.
And can you think of an incident where you may feel like looking back at it now, but not at the time, that maybe you did use your I'm white so I win this against a black person?
Well, not. Probably I could drag something out if I thought about it, but I'm not. No, I can't think of anything against a black person, like, you know, one-on-one kind of conversation. But I can say that one of the things I thought about when we moved to Southwest Atlanta, one of the first things I noticed was that the service in the stores was terrible. Terrible. And so the lines would be super long at the grocery store sometimes, and then finally somebody explained to me, like, oh, this is the day EBT comes out. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I, like, Mark, don't go to the grocery store on those days.
That's real, even today.
And it was just not something that I had ever really thought about.
Right. It's not nothing you needed.
Even in Columbia, when I lived in Columbia, South Carolina, it was it's probably not 50% black, but there are a lot more black folks there than in, like, the northwest corner of South Carolina where I grew up. So the upstate has probably the fewest blacks per capita in South Carolina, and then the Midlands has more, and then you get down to the low country and then it's more. But in Columbia, you know, there were lots and lots of black folks, but I never noticed the grocery stores had a particular day that was super crowded, or that the lines would be super long, because it was also the state capital and there were major universities there, so there was just better service in general.
And it probably wasn't as many people using the government benefits where you was living then versus in South Atlanta.
And when I went to when I went to move to Southwest Atlanta, it was a huge difference. So here's where I played like my ability, or what I did was I was just like, I really want to spend my money in my neighborhood, but I can't take this. So I would drive to a different neighborhood to shop sometimes. And I had a car, and I had the ability to do that.
Right.
A lot of my neighbors didn't. And so I knew that because of not even because of my skin color, but this all plays in together, right? The fact that I could afford to just get in my car and drive to a different neighborhood to get better service was privilege.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's jump into these questions.
Okay.
Let's see which one we.
So this isn't it hasn't been the interview yet.
I mean, this is still an interview, but I just wanted to give the people background about you, because with the last video, I feel like it was more so Oh, exactly what it was. Two strangers running into each other, just like I said, can I record this?
Yeah.
And I recorded it.
Yeah, it was like a gorilla move.
Right. Right. I came in there and Donkey Kong and
I
all
was
that.
ambushed.
Oops. I was ambushed first. I posed for you first.
You did.
Okay, I was just collecting the payment, that's all. But yes, I wanted to let people know who you are. You know what I'm saying? This is not about me. It's purely your opinion and how you can help the people listening. Like, I sitting here interviewing you have learned some things. So if don't nobody else learn anything off of this, I want you to know I did, and I want to say thank you for that.
Well, it's been really fun experience so far for me.
Yes, yes. So let's see what questions on here we haven't answered.
Oh, I know one. You were going to ask me, or you had on your list about racist stuff in my past, like not me, but like my childhood. One thing I didn't talk to you about is I had an uncle in the KKK.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So, at least that's what I was told later. I never heard this from him, but when I was very young, my maternal grandparents owned a fishing lake in South Carolina. So people would come and pay to fish, and then they would have like contests for the biggest fish, and that sort of thing. So like super kind of redneck white people thing. I don't know.
I fish.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually thinking about it now. I guess it was not just white people fishing there. Probably was like a real mixed group. But when I was young, we would occasionally, very rarely, hang out in the concession stand. And I remember seeing some literature in there when I was just barely old enough to read. And there was like some pamphlets sitting around that had things like the eyes of the KKK are on you.
Wow.
And just that's the only phrase I remember. But other pamphlets around with like the rebel flag on them and Christian cross and just stuff that shouldn't be going together. And I thought as a child, like, what is that about? Like, that's super creepy. And then I was told later that it was my uncle's literature. And I'm not going to use his name or anything. He has since moved on to whatever his next life is. But it was just super weird and creepy. And that was my main experience with anything like that. But I just thought, wow, like this person's in my family.
Right.
And my grandparents had that that concession stand that had that stuff sitting around.
So other than that, you haven't really been head-on hit with racism altercation, like maybe where you maybe defended a black person or...
Well, my other grandmother, it's like not that exactly, but when I was in 8th grade, I was taking South Carolina history, and we were asked to do an interview with an older person. So my other grandparents, my maternal grandparents, were still living, and all my grandparents, I guess, at that point were. But I interviewed my grandmother that I was super close to, the one that I was named for, and I just asked her, like questions about growing up and what she thought about, this and that, and somehow we got on the topic of race relations, I guess, and she said, she just said, well, I just think things were easier back when, when everybody knew their place. And I remember thinking to myself, huh, wow,
That's
my
right.
grandmother's a racist. But it wasn't that unusual a thought at the time. And I could kind of understand why somebody her age, a white person her age, would want to go back to the time when people weren't arguing and fighting and wanting their part of the pie. Well, there's only so much pie.
Well, people, when you say people from that point of view, it's white people.
Oh, right. So I'm
black
sorry.
people were still fighting.
Oh, sure. Right. No. Of course. Yeah. So there I go again.
Right.
With like, if you don't specify, then it means white, right?
Right.
And that's not. So yes, you're totally right. No, I can understand why a white person her age, would feel some trepidation at the advancements that black people are making. But what's so dumb is that people don't realize it's not really a pie. The pie can get bigger. Right. The more people who have access to good jobs and let's just face it, like more money. Right. More money in the economy means more pie for everybody. Right. So by trying to keep other people down, you're not helping yourself.
Exactly.
All you're doing is hurting them.
Exactly.
And having them get what is their fair share isn't really taking anything away from you.
It's greed.
It's greed, and it's a sense of, it's fear. And greed comes out of fear.
Right.
Greed comes out of a fear of lack. So you feel like you lack something. And that grandmother was not raised rich by any standard. Like she picked cotton when she was young. Like she and my grandfather, picked cotton, and they did every kind of job they could do in between they had regular jobs, and then they worked a whole bunch of other jobs to help take care of their kids and advance and buy their house and exactly. So I'm sure that she saw it as people moving in on her part of the pie.
Exactly.
But that's just all from a sense from a sense of lack or fear of lack, and that's where greed comes from, and it's just all fear.
And I would say fear controls a lot of people's life. Just speaking from my own experience.
Absolutely.
Dealing with, I've been a writer my whole life. Mm-hmm. Anything with writing I can do. Mm-hmm. That is not my personality. My writing comes more so from my vulnerable side. Mm-hmm. So that's not what I was ready to give the world. So it took me all this time to be like where I'm at now. Like, I don't care if you're looking, if you're not looking, I'm gonna help who's listening, and I'm gonna keep pushing because this is my dream. Mm-hmm. And no one else can touch that. Uh-huh. But that's fear. So now, as of 2020, things that I fear, I will do. Mm-hmm. I've been saying I was gonna start my channels for 5 years now. Mm-hmm. It started, I'm scared of crowds. Thursday I will be in front of a crowd doing something. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but something. So I would like to say that fear, it takes people to that mindset of I can't. Right. And that's why people don't understand when people say don't use the words I can't. It's because that's a form of fear, and you don't realize it. Your brain is not processing that.
Right. It's so interesting the way that our subconscious and conscious minds work.
And it's all about reprogramming, and reprogramming your brain is the hardest thing. Where I still fall where I have to.
Is like what I'm trying to do right now too.
Me too.
And what so many white people who don't want to be racist.
They don't know how to go about it.
And want to. Yeah, we want to understand how we can reprogram our brains away from the dominant white norm.
Right. Yeah. So you know what? This is what I'm gonna do. I haven't even released this out yet. Uh-huh. I'm gonna read this to you. Okay. And I want your opinion on it.
Okay.
So look, y'all finally lucked out. Y'all get to hear 2020. Here it goes. It's called 2020. Uh-huh. 2020, year of control. There's too many people. Somebody's gotta go. Don't worry, we'll ease it on them slow. First, we'll just tell them to stay home. And the ones who don't listen, families will soon be reminiscent because COVID-19, we will be injected. We'll say it's a test so they could care less until they get the strange feeling in their chest. 2020, year of death. Over 50,000 worldwide and not done yet. 'Twas our object to carry terror and destruction wherever we went, as Nate Turner said best. Or is it just a reaction of the badge and the vest? But is that not how we choose to protest, more or less? So what happened to Martin's dream? Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Quoted by Dr. King. Now you see there's a positive and negative reaction to everything. Therefore you should choose wisely how you proceed. For both these men were murdered fighting for peace, yet both of these men made history. 2020, year of unity. We finally got the whites and celebrities. We even got different countries willing to protest for the victory. For Brianna, for George, for the tasered teens. Blackout. Moment of silence, please. Now, back to reality. This isn't a race thing. Black lives matter, no, all lives matter. That's what the world needs to see. The Declaration of Independence didn't say I, it said we. Therefore, until we unite, we will always meet defeat. 2020, year the flag should fall, because last time I checked, I pledge allegiance to justice for all. 2020, year of destruction. The movie said it would be through eruption, which brings me to this discussion. COVID-19, the cops killing another black man saying he couldn't breathe, a distraction to keep our focus off what can't be seen. Sometimes you have to read in between. We're so focused on the here and now, we forget our history. And one thing it tends to do is repeat. Are we really calling Trump a Nazi? Well, this time, let's not meet defeat. Because for after the war, there is peace. And if death shall approach me, I'll go with ease. For the cause, I'll give anything. What's your opinion?
It's a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot to think about. So I'm not 100% sure that I understand everything that you're saying in this piece. And of course the numbers have risen a lot since you wrote it.
Right.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get it in a video to put it out.
Right.
But
yeah. So the just here in the U.S. we're at 130,000 deaths.
Right. That's crazy.
It's crazy. And yeah, we're calling Trump a Nazi or fascist anyway. And rightfully so. But yeah, you were talking about history repeating.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
But still, like I said, it is. It's like this is our opportunity to find out, like, well, you said every time you heard about Hitler and Germany in the 1930s and early 40s, you always said, oh, well, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have followed along. I wouldn't have, agreed with him and the way he treated people. And so, like, are we going to stand up? And a lot of people are choosing, yes.
Right.
We're going to stand up and say, no, this isn't right. And, not just Trump, but what's going on with just in general, what's going on with the police. And, I have family who are law enforcement officers, so it's a pretty touchy subject in my family. But yeah, we need to, at the very least, retrain our military, I say our military because the police are militarized now. So I keep trying to say police and end up saying military.
Which is fine.
And it's because they are. They're militarized.
I feel like in reality what it boils down to is that the government needs to make it known that police are citizen too. So therefore the same guidelines and rules that we have to follow, they have to deal with that same thing when that badge is not done. Because at the end of the day, when you're killing an innocent man, you're no longer a cop.
Right. You're just a murderer.
My point exactly.
Yeah.
And murderer does not come with a race behind it.
Right.
So you have to prosecute the same way you would prosecute a black man.
Mm-hmm. Or if they killed a white, like prosecute them as if they had killed
they wouldn't shoot a white man.
Well, but if they did, that they'd get prosecuted.
Right, because a white man can go into church and kill 50 people and go to court.
And get
where a black man can go to the gas station
on the way to the
yeah, and that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy.
It is.
But overall, what do you think about the poem?
Well, like I said, I'm not sure. I mean, it's a powerful piece, and so I'd have to probably sit and look at it on paper
and analyze
for a while.
it. Got you.
But there's just crazy stuff going on right now.
It's a lot, and I just have one more question.
Okay.
What do you want to tell the world out there listening right now?
Oh yeah. Okay. So, white folks.
Not me. Black folks, we can do this.
White folks, you probably are racist and don't know it. Because our society it's racist at its core. It was founded on a lot of racist ideas, and we have treated other people in this country like white people, we being white people, have treated other people in this country terribly, starting with people who lived here when we moved in. And I didn't see it, but I heard the other day that at Trump's speech in South Dakota, there were Native American protesters there, and the Trump supporters were yelling at them, "Go back to where you came from."
Sad. I don't follow or listen to anything that has to do with Trump.
Well, I know. I try not to even say his name. I usually say 45, but
Toupee.
That would hurt his feelings really badly.
It's okay.
No, it's cool with me. But yeah. So the thing about racism is actually, it's not really so much about a single person's actions toward another person. That's more prejudice.
It's groups.
But it's the system. It's the system that is the foundation of like our country. And racism was built into the system. So we are, like I was saying earlier, we're basically simmered in a stew, if you will, of racism. Black folks, white folks, everybody is simmered in this stew because that's what we're living in. And so nobody can really avoid it, but we can work against it. We can recognize it. And that's the main thing. The first thing is just to recognize that we probably have racist thoughts and attitudes not intending to.
Thinking it's just being biased.
It's just, yeah, it's like implicit bias. It's just what we're kind of born into. And it takes work. And we have to, as white people, we have to start talking about race. Recognizing race and talking about it. And not that race is a real biological thing, it's a social construct. But it's real in that it causes harm to other people. So the genetic differences between us are extremely small, as two humans, as two women, even smaller. And the color of our skin is a tiny, 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 tiny portion of that. Really small percentage of what makes us us. But it's a visible thing. And so that's the thing, is like, as a white person, I can walk through this country. I was born in a working class family, but I got a good education. And I could, if I wanted to, dress myself up like a really rich person, get my hair done in a rich person style, put on really like rich people clothes, and just be accepted as a rich person. Or I could make myself to look like any white person in America and just be accepted in whatever that community is. But black folks don't have the option of changing that the first impression, which is the skin color. And so we just need to understand as white people that that's what white privilege is. That's what white fragility is, the fact that we don't want to talk about that we have this advantage that's built into the system.
Because that's giving away your advantage. Why would I do something to take away my pluses?
And because we didn't do it like current, like people living now, didn't make the system, we don't really recognize that it was done intentionally. So we don't want to, and oh man, this could be a whole other interview, but yesterday I had made a new friend on Facebook who was an artist, a white woman who lives, I believe, in Mississippi, and she's probably a little older than I am, so I would say just at a guess from photo that I've seen, she's probably in her mid-60s or a little older than that. It's hard to tell after people are about 35.
Y'all do age quick, but they say black don't crack, so the opposite had to go somewhere.
Yeah, but no, it's not just that, but even amongst white people, it's hard to tell after about age 35, because it kind of depends on, did you smoke, did you do this, did you do that, did you get a lot of sun, you know, like, are you healthy or are you not healthy? Somebody could look vastly different
My
at the
grandma's
same age.
82, 83, and she doesn't have not one stretch mark.
That's amazing.
My point exactly.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Okay.
But even from white person to white person, we can't tell how old other white people are, or anybody for that matter. But anyway, point of the story is, yesterday, she said on Facebook, you know, they want us to start hating our ancestors and our country or something like that. And I was like, and a lot of her friends were like, oh yes, I've noticed that. And yes, it's terrible, and I'm stubborn, and I'm not gonna. Oh, they wanted us to get rid of our flag. That was the other thing she said. Our flag.
I mentioned that in my poem.
Now, I don't know if she meant specifically the Confederate battle flag, or if she meant Mississippi's flag, which still incorporates battle flag elements. I mean, the Georgia flag still incorporates the Stars and Bars, which is a different Confederate flag anyway. It's just not the rebel cross. But anyway, lots of her friends were just like, oh yeah, you're right. They want us to hate our ancestors, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm just going to stop for a minute. No, they want us to get rid of our history. That was it. They want us to get rid of our history and hate our ancestors. They'll get rid of our flag and our history and hate our ancestors. And I was just like, okay, I'm just going to come in and be a naysayer. Because I'm going to say that all these monuments to Confederates, because I think she was talking about specifically Confederate and stuff. She didn't say that, but just reading between the lines. I mean, it was 4th of July, and a lot of people were talking about how they're not feeling like saluting the flag right now because the flag doesn't, like, our country doesn't reflect what we were taught the country's supposed to be. But still, going back to being Southern, I said, as a white Southerner, I'm going to be a naysayer here and say that these Confederate monuments that are being taken down, that is not erasing history.
At all. It's correcting history.
It's exactly right, and we're not. That nobody's asking you to hate your ancestors, but understand that they were racist.
Exactly, and do better.
Right. I mean, they were racist, and they did terrible. A lot of them did terrible things. Doesn't mean that you can't still love them as your ancestor. It just means recognize that they were people of their time, and they did terrible things. So these monuments, we don't need to have monuments in the public square to people who rebelled against this country in order to maintain their ability to enslave other humans.
Right.
To kidnap them from their families and enslave them. That's what we are what we're celebrating and honoring by having these monuments in the public square. And that's what the Civil War was about. It was not about states' rights. It was about racism and slavery. And if you want to know more about this, and you don't believe what I'm telling you, if you've been sold the states' rights bill of goods, go back and read Alexander Stevenson, the Vice President of the Confederacy. Read his Cornerstone speech. It's available anywhere online. Just look up Alexander Stevenson Cornerstone speech. And it's a speech that he gave at the beginning of, it was just right after, I think, the state started seceding from the Union. He was explaining why. He gave the speech in Savannah, and we went and looked for the theater where he gave it. And there's a plaque that talks about it. But if you go online, you can find the speech. And he talks about a bunch of boring stuff about why they were seceding. But then he gets into the meat of the matter, which is, and he talks about our peculiar institution, which was just jargon for slavery. And he specifically says African slavery. And he talks about how they wanted to keep that, specifically because they believed that the Negro was inferior. And that is spelled out in his Cornerstone speech. It's a long speech, and then the part where he talks about slavery and white superiority is a chunk. It's a big old several paragraphs. It's too long for me to read to you right now. But read it. You should read it, for sure. Especially white folks. You need to go read that. Because it completely puts the lie to this whole bullshit about states' rights. And, oh, it wasn't about slavery. No, it was about slavery. It was 100% about slavery.
And I feel like blacks had a reason to be inferior. Blacks have a reason to be inferior right now.
Well, you rip somebody out of their homeland.
Exactly.
And you expect them to immediately start to speak English like you do.
Or understand. You're changing my name.
Yeah. You're making me do this job I've never been trained to do.
You're raping my wife.
Yeah.
So,
you
of
ripped
course
me from my family. I mean, I think just the language barrier itself. Like, for whatever reason, white folks who speak English have always thought that people who didn't speak English were stupid somehow. You know, we're the ones who aren't speaking other languages.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's crazy. And I also want to say, gosh, it just came out of my head. Oh, as of now, I feel like this. From where I've come from, my mom is also a single mother of 3. So it's no choice. Black people don't have it most of the time, even now, to where they can be born weak. I can't raise my child, my son, my daughter to be weak, because my daughter's weak, then this world is gonna break her. This world broke me. I died and fucking resurrected, okay? This world broke me, and I'm still here today standing, and that's what my page is all about, the hope. Because going through it, I didn't know how I was gonna get through it. And
we could have a whole other conversation about why the black family is broken.
Right. So
and it's just what white folks did to black folks again.
Exactly.
Once
again. We don't have the option, as you say. You have it very easy.
Yeah.
Black people, we don't have the option to be weak. You know, minus what we deal with outside of home. Black people are usually born into a situation where there is no hope to make it out. There is no hope to be better.
Exactly, and that's what I'm talking about.
This world lacks hope. Period.
Yeah, and I'm not. You know, the exception does not mean that that's not true. Like, you'll see, of course, you get exceptional people. You get people who made it out through some like crazy good luck, or well, probably usually a combination of good luck and some kind of intense drive within them.
Yes.
But just like normal people?
Right, no, they're not even woke. They're like I won't say The Wiz because you probably don't know that.
No, I know The Wiz.
Okay, cool. So you know how in the movie they was like, oh, the color is green and everyone else, everything turned green. I would have been a person still wearing purple, and that's how the world acts. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Oh, the government says focus on this, and we're gonna do this while that happens, and people focus on this. But I want to know what you're doing over here.
Have you ever seen Wag the Dog?
No.
Okay, that's another film about that exact thing.
Right. So, and that's the problem with the
world. Smoke and mirrors.
Right. You can't be asleep and expect change. You can't promote something today and give up on it tomorrow and expect it to work.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with the world. They don't have the drive. There's not a lot of people out there that have drive, and it really boils down to faith. Everything I'm doing right now is me jumping out on faith. But I've never felt before. I've been through so much and I'm still standing. So where's this faith? Where's the faith that I don't have $0 to my name, but my rent's gonna be paid? Where's the faith that I lost my job today, but it's okay because my car still got gas in it? I still have a bed to lay in. Where's that faith? There's people don't even want to give God his credit. You know what I'm saying? I went to the gas station, and as I said, I blast my music wherever I go. So when I went to the gas station today, I was listening to Let Go, which is a church song. And if I can blast, some Megan Stallion, I can blast me some Let Go, okay? So, and I parked right here where, everyone just looking at me like, oh my God, turn your music down. No, because I'm giving God his glory. Because guess what? Without God, I wouldn't have been on my way here. I wouldn't be, okay, I got an interview today. I can't do nothing until I get this interview down. That's my faith. You don't see him, but this chair is empty for a reason. Y'all see God wave at him. Okay, cool, because he just blessed it. People don't want to give that credit, but all things through Christ, you can do. you can do. That's why I was able to go to the core of my issues and correct it. I was able to go and bury myself and be reborn. And that's what people need to understand. If you have no hope, you have no faith. So if I can give you hope, you will get faith. And if you get faith, your life will change, period. And with that being said, I want to thank you for this opportunity to be able to sit down with you. And also these pictures Lisa's do, I haven't got them yet. I am going to post them as soon as I get them, which hopefully is today.
Yeah.
And going forward, you know what I'm saying, I wouldn't mind different topics coming back and sit down with you.
Yeah, I love that.
Or even taking you and having an interview with maybe an older black woman. What's the difference? Or older black man.
That'd be great.
You know, I have an interview coming up, not this week, but the week after that. He's a correctional officer. And he's also a mentor, and he's also a certified counselor for addiction. Which I'm over a little over a year clean. You know what I'm saying? I haven't even been, thank you. I haven't even been out of jail for over a year. I was locked up when Cobb County was on lockdown.
Oh, wow.
So my thing about it is, the interview to me would be great considering the fact that, hey, you're the opposite of what I just went through. So let's talk about this because,
of the bars.
right, these people in Cobb County wasn't treating me like this. You know what I'm saying? And it's not many correctional officers out there that actually care enough. And that's the problem.
We don't pay people enough to get the cream of the crop, typically. We get people who are either doing it because they have to, or because they have such a drive to do it.
Right.
And
But for someone to die in a jail, Sandra Bland, that blows my mind.
Yeah, it's absolutely unconscionable.
But that's the system again.
Yeah, it is.
It's the system. Everyone, I will be tagging Lisa's information in this video, and I will be sharing it on my Facebook, Brasia Clark, and my Instagram, bipolar_Barbie20. And this video will be on my YouTube channel, Let Bree Tell It. So be looking forward to the next interviews, and let's thank Lisa for this interview, y'all. Hopefully we help somebody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you really made me think about some stuff that I hadn't thought about, didn't want to think about, or, was really happy to think about. It was just like, I did a lot of thinking this week, so.
My motto, and I tell everyone this, progress, not perfection.
Absolutely.
So if you're making progress, if you're different than you was yesterday, then you're fine. And that's the problem. We as people have to stop being so hard on ourselves.
Right.
Nothing happens overnight. Just the start of I'm changing. If you see that change, you're making progress.
Right.
Nothing in life is ever perfect.
No.
I'm pretty sure if I examine this glass, it's not perfectly made.
No.
It's something wrong with it.
Right.
So how could we be perfect?
Yeah.
God didn't ask us to be perfect because he already knew our sins. Right. Cut.